I came home to an empty house and a note saying he took the kids because I shared a bathrobe with my ex. But what happened when I called the authorities about my missing children will shock you even more. I stood there in my kitchen holding this ridiculous note thinking my husband Mike had finally lost his mind. I mean, who takes their own children away over a bathrobe? I called him 17 times, but every single call went straight to voicemail. Then I called his mother. "Helen, it's Jessica. Where are Mike and the kids?" I said when she picked up. "Jessica, honey, I think you need to take some time to reflect on your choices," she said in that cold voice I'd never heard before. "What choices? What are you talking about?" I practically screamed into the phone. "The bathrobe, Jessica. Mrs. Peterson from Jake's building called Mike at work today with photos. Photos. My stomach dropped. Mrs. Peterson, that nosy old witch, had been watching me. Helen, it's not what it looks like. Jake was going through a crisis and I was just being a supportive friend," I explained. "A supportive friend who spends the night and wears his bathrobe in the morning," she said. "The children are staying here until Mike figures out what to do." She hung up on me. His own mother hung up on me. I tried calling my sister next. "Sarah, thank God you answered. Mike's lost his mind and taken the kids over nothing," I said. "Jess, I heard about the photos," she said quietly. "Maybe you should have thought about this before you spent the night at your ex-boyfriend's place. We didn't do anything wrong. We just talked all night about his divorce," I said. "Since when is being a good friend a crime?" "Since you started lying about where you were," Sarah said. "Mike called me last night looking for you. I told him you said you were at my place, but you weren't here, Jess." Even my own sister was turning against me. I hung up and tried Mike one more time. This time he answered. "What do you want, Jessica?" he said in a voice I didn't recognize. "I want my children back," I said. "You can't just take them away because you're having trust issues." "Trust issues?" He laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "I have photos of you leaving Jake's apartment building at 10 in the morning, wearing his bathrobe, Jessica. Mrs. Peterson sent them to my work email." "It's not what you think," I said. "My bathrobe was in the wash, and I needed to shower before work." "Your bathrobe was in the wash," he repeated. "So you decided to shower at your ex-boyfriend's place and wear his clothes." "Jake offered to let me use his shower because mine was broken," I lied. "We're adults, Mike. We can be friends." "Adults who sleep over at each other's places," he said. "Adults who lie about their whereabouts. Adults who wear each other's bathrobes." "You're twisting everything," I said. "If you really loved me, you'd trust me." "If you really loved me, you wouldn't have spent the night at another man's apartment," he said and hung up. I sat there staring at my phone thinking about how this whole mess started. Let me explain how we got to this insane situation. My name's Jessica, I'm 29, and work in marketing, and I thought I was just being a good friend. Jake and I dated in college for 2 years before we broke up when he moved across the country for work. We stayed in touch on social media, but hadn't seen each other in person for almost 8 years. Then, 6 months ago, he moved back to town, going through a messy divorce, and reached out to me on Facebook. "Hey stranger, remember me?" his message said with a smiley face emoji. I showed Mike the message, and he just shrugged and said, "That's nice," so I figured it was fine to meet Jake for coffee to catch up. We met at this little cafe downtown and talked for 3 hours about his divorce and how hard it was being alone in a new city again. "It's so good to have someone who really understands me," Jake said as we were leaving. "Sarah never got my sense of humor like you did. I felt bad for him going through such a hard time, so when he asked if we could meet again the next week, I said yes. Mike wasn't thrilled, but he didn't say I couldn't, so I kept meeting Jake every Tuesday for coffee. He's just going through a rough patch," I told Mike when he asked why I was seeing Jake so much. "I'm being a supportive friend." "Supportive friends don't need to meet every week," Mike said. "You're being paranoid," I said. "Jake and I are ancient history. We're just friends now." But our coffee date started lasting longer. Jake would call me at night when he was feeling lonely, and we'd talk for hours about his marriage problems and my work stress. He really listened to me, unlike Mike, who was always distracted by his phone or the TV. "At least Jake cares about my promotion chances," I told Mike, after Jake spent an hour giving me advice about my presentation, while Mike barely looked up from his laptop. "Maybe because Jake doesn't have bills to pay and kids to worry about," Mike said. "Maybe because Jake actually listens when I talk," I shot back. Things escalated when Jake started having what he called emergency situations, where he needed someone to talk to right away. The first time he called crying about his ex-wife taking his dog, I rushed over to his apartment with Chinese takeout, and we talked until 2 in the morning. "Where were you last night?" Mike asked the next morning. "You didn't come to bed." "I fell asleep on the couch watching Netflix." I lied because I knew he wouldn't understand about Jake needing support. These emergency visits became more frequent. Jake would text me saying he was having a panic attack or couldn't sleep because of anxiety about the divorce proceedings. I started bringing overnight bags because I knew I'd end up staying late comforting him. "You're spending more time with Jake than your own family," Mike said after I missed our son's soccer game to help Jake deal with his lawyer. "He doesn't have anyone else," I explained. "His family lives in Colorado and he doesn't know anyone here besides me." "That's not your problem, Jessica," Mike said. "You have responsibilities here." "Since when is being a good friend irresponsible?" I said. "If roles were reversed, you'd want me to support your friends too." "If roles were reversed, I wouldn't be having sleepovers with my ex-girlfriend," he said. "They're not sleepovers," I said. "We just talk until we fall asleep on the couch." But Mike was getting more suspicious. He started asking specific questions about where I was and what time I'd be home. When I told him I was going to my sister's house, but went to Jake's instead, he actually called Sarah to check up on me. "Why are you checking up on me?" I asked when he confronted me about the lie. "Why are you lying to me?" he shot back. "Because I knew you'd react exactly like this," I said. "You're being controlling and jealous over nothing." The final straw came last Tuesday when Mike gave me an ultimatum. "This ends now, Jessica," he said. "Either you stop seeing Jake or we're done." "You can't give me ultimatums about my friendships," I said. "That's controlling behavior." "Controlling behavior is what you're doing to this family," he said. "Choose." I chose Jake. Not romantically, but I chose to be there for someone who actually needed me instead of giving in to Mike's insecurities. When Jake called Wednesday night having another crisis about his custody hearing, I went over despite Mike's threats. "I can't handle this alone," Jake said when I got to his apartment. "The lawyer says Sarah might get full custody." We talked all night about his fears and his regrets. Around 5 in the morning, I realized I needed to shower and get ready for work, but I'd forgotten to pack clean clothes. "Use my shower," Jake said, "and you can borrow one of my bathrobes until your clothes dry." It seemed perfectly innocent. I showered, put on his navy blue bathrobe, and we kept talking over coffee about his court date next week. I didn't leave until 9:30 because he was finally feeling better, and I wanted to make sure he'd be okay. I had no idea Mrs. Peterson was watching from her window. I had no idea she was taking photos. I definitely had no idea she was sending them to my husband's work email with a note saying, "Thought you should know what your wife is up to." Now, here I am 3 days later, and Mike won't return my calls. The kids won't talk to me because his mother told them I was making bad choices. My coworkers are whispering because somehow everyone at the office heard about the photos. Even my best friend Lisa said maybe I should take some time to think about things. This morning, the divorce papers arrived by courier. Apparently, I'm the villain in this story just because I wore Jake's bathrobe while mine was in the wash. I still don't understand how supporting a friend through his divorce makes me a cheater when we just talked all night. Subscribe if you think some people will never see their own mistakes. Smash that like if you've ever had a friend who was completely clueless about their behavior. And tell me in the comments, would you have taken the kids too, or given her one more chance?